You gotta grow up somewhere. Hey, I am Chuck the Bureaucrat, and a number of you have kind of prodded me into addressing the general question of, is it a good idea to join the military? And in a nutshell, I would say the answer is yes. But that's not the same as saying that serving in the military is either fun or easy. It has been my experience, both in my civilian jobs and my military jobs, that work sucks. Having a boss is not fun, and having people working for you is even less fun. So when people start asking whether or not the military is a good job, I like to get down to the nuts and bolts. I mean, it's like the whole red herring about military suicide rates. It turns out that that's more media sensationalism than reality. And there are some benign-sounding civilian jobs like barbers, truck drivers, map makers, agricultural scientists, some civilian jobs that have shockingly high suicide rates. But of course, you never hear about those. Anyways, what I wanted to talk about today was a fundamental and unavoidable phase of human development that Daniel Levitin calls transition to adulthood. It's a period of time from about 17 to 25 years old where young men and women transition from living in their parents' house and living under the rules of their parents to living on their own and making, their own rules. That transition often requires what I call a halfway house. Some kind of supportive infrastructure that isn't the family household, but it isn't quite the real world. And the two most common halfway houses that young adults pass through are college and the military. I mean, think about it. Both have a model of communal living, whether it's dorms or barracks. Both have a supervisory structure, whether it's resident assistants and professors or team leaders and first sergeants. Both provide meaningful activities, whether it's classroom instruction or field exercises. And both clearly have the goal of developing the individual to take on greater future responsibility. So before we go on, there is a third method of passing through this transition, and that's sort of going and getting a job at the local factory. But I'm going to tend not to talk about that because it has some serious weaknesses when compared to college or the military. But between college and the military, I argue that the military is far superior in performing this halfway house function. First, you get paid for being in the military, and in college, you go into debt. Number two, the military has a much more clear-eyed view of the connection between the skills that people develop and the ways those skills are going to be used. The military provides its training in skills that are specifically chosen and continuously reviewed to make sure that they produce a combat-ready force. While college lets fuzzy-headed young people just pick the curriculums that make them happy. And colleges take little or no responsibility for the social impact of those choices. Graduating too many lawyers? Phew, colleges don't care. Want to be a lawyer in the military but lack the aptitude? They are not going to make you a JAG. And I know, somebody out there is going to grouse that the military is always doing some goofy, socially progressive project. Like DEI, or putting women into combat units, or repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell, or phasing out the draft, or integrating units. But there's a couple of observations that I think reflect positively on the military when it comes to these programs. First, these initiatives are usually second mover. They respond to shifts that are already underway in the American population, and they're not the revolutionary, pioneering efforts that you might see on a college campus. Second, these initiatives unfold under the leadership of literally thousands of military leaders with decades of experience that includes getting the mission done and dealing with these kinds of things. They've seen this kind of thing before. They know what the The real mission is, and they're not going to burn down the drill hall. And I'm not sure that colleges can say that. Oh, and let me just say this one thing. Every single one of these initiatives always boils down to the same question in the military mind. How can we use this to make ourselves a more ready force? Anyway, what was I talking about? Oh, why the military is a better halfway house than college. Well, what about that college degree? I mean, surely if Mom browbeats Billy into going to college, he'll be better off, right? I'm not so sure. Do you know what happens to a kid who fails out of college in the first year, maybe year and a half? Because I don't know. I mean, it's not like my graduating class had people who had spent 2 years in college, failed out, come back, and then successfully graduated. But we had a lot of prior military. And believe it or not, a sizable percentage of the people who join the military, do 4 years, and then get out, well, they end up in college and they tend to graduate at higher rates. And sure, part of it is the self-discipline that they learned in the military. And part of it is the educational benefits that they're entitled to as veterans. And I think there's also a third reason that makes the military a great place to get started. You see, some brand new private who says, I ain't never getting a college degree. Well, he finds himself working in close proximity to a whole bunch of people who have college degrees. His first sergeant? Well, that guy probably picked up a degree along the way. Maybe even his platoon sergeant has a college degree. And the lieutenant is certainly going to have a degree. And I argue that that platoon leader is going to do something magical. You see, either the platoon leader is some green to gold prior service lieutenant, and our private looks at him and says, I guess a guy like me can go to college. Or, more likely, the lieutenant is from West Point or he's an ROTC grad. And our private starts noticing that college boy ain't so special. Kind of seems to him like just about anybody can get a college degree. So, if Billy wants to join the Marines and see the world, I'm pretty suspicious that eventually he's going to end up back in college. Oh, and by the way, if he's still single, it is going to be awesome. My last point about the military comes back to the pay. I might do a video in the future focused specifically on this, but it's important to know that the Department of Defense's position is that in order to attract the volume and, more importantly, the quality of service members that they want, the pay has to be in the 70th percentile for an education level and an age group. That means 18-year-old high school grads versus 18-year-old high school grads. And 42-year-olds with master's degree versus 42-year-olds with master's degrees. In fact, every 4 years, the Department of Defense does a massive study to assess this benchmark and to see how they're doing against it. And the next one is due at the end of this year. So, is the pay perfect? Well, if you're the next Steve Jobs, maybe not. But for a run-of-the-mill schmuck like me, it's pretty good. It's tough to beat, especially when you take into consideration the healthcare benefits. Now, there is one factor that I have skipped over that might be really important to the mothers of America, and that is military service safe? I'm going to leave that for you guys to handle in the comments section, and I'm just going to leave it at this. I believe that the answer is yes. The military is a safe environment for a whole host of reasons. But if you're still wondering why I argue that this whole issue of military suicides is just media hype, watch this video.